Welcome back to TFT Central. Today we're going to be taking you through the best settings for the MSI MAG 341 CQP monitor. We'll set it up for both SDR and HDR usage. You can change these settings yourself via the on-screen menu or alternatively via the Gaming Intelligence app, which is supported on this model as well. Or you can also download our settings for the Gaming Intelligence app to quickly import into that if you'd rather. So we're going to start by setting up the screen in SDR mode. In this opening GI section, you can of course control things like the KVM function and the smart crosshair if you want to use those features. In the gaming section, you'll see there's a selection of game mode presets. Now these are alternatives to the modes that are available in the professional pro mode setting here. They could equally all just be in one menu, but they've been split out into two different sections. But whichever you activate last will be the setting that is live for the screen. So we're actually going to use the settings via the pro mode menu later. In the game mode menu, you can turn on any of the additional features you want for your gaming, including adaptive sync here, which will activate the variable refresh rates. The majority of the settings that we're going to change are in this pro mode menu. We're going to move out of the eco mode and into the user mode. Now there are a couple of different options here depending on your requirements. So the user mode will operate the screen in its full native wide gamut. So if you prefer the more saturated and vivid looking colours of that for gaming and multimedia, or you're operating with wide colour gamut content, you will probably want to use the user mode. Alternatively, you can use any of the provided emulation modes. There's options for sRGB, Adobe RGB and Display P3. So if you're working specifically with content in any of those colour spaces, you can use the provided emulation modes. Some people might want to use the sRGB mode for a high level of accuracy for SDR content. We'll set it up in both modes. So first of all, let's use the user mode. Back in the image section, we're going to adjust the brightness. So you can move this down to a setting of 33, which will deliver you a luminance of around 120 nits. Alternatively, you could set this at a level of 46 for 150 nits or 68 for 200 nits, depending on your ambient light conditions and your preferences. We're going to set that for 120 nits at 33 for now. The other setting that we're going to change is we're going to move out of the normal color temperature mode and into the customization mode. You'll see the screen goes dark initially, but what we're going to do is bump each of these RGB channels up to 100 to start with, which will return the brightness that we had before. And the tweaks that we're going to make here would be to lower red to 99 and green to 99 as well. We'll leave blue set on 100. And that will return you a white point very close to D65 or 6500 Kelvin. So we've used the customization color temperature setting there. As you can see, brightness has been adjusted as well. If you're using the user mode, you might also want to try out our calibrated ICC profile that's linked in the description below. That will map the full native gamut of the panel back to sRGB for color aware applications. So that's well worth checking out if you're going to be using that mode. The other option is you can use the sRGB emulation mode, so we can change to that here. You'll see that in the image section, the color temperature is actually now not available at all, it's grayed out. So the only setting you can change here is for the brightness control. You'll want to move that somewhere to around 35 for 120 nits, around 50 for 150 nits, or around 70 for 200 nits in sRGB mode. So you can select which mode you want to use depending on whether you want to use the more accurate sRGB color gamut for SDR content or whether you just want to stick with the full wide gamut mode if you're not that bothered about the accuracy as it were and you preferred the wider color gamut and more saturated image. The other options that we'll have a quick look at here would be in the settings menu. We can enable HDMI CEC here. So that will also detect any HDMI input that powers on like a games console or whatever and will switch over to that input automatically. That's a handy feature to turn on. You can also turn on the Type-C power delivery charge there if you're using the Type-C connection. We can also configure the OLED Care options in this separate menu here. We're actually going to turn the pixel shift setting down to slow. You can't turn that fully off, but we find it a little bit distracting during desktop usage, so we're going to turn it down to slow here. The panel protect feature can be run manually if you want, or you will get pop-up notices from time to time when it needs to be run, so nothing really to do there. The rest of them you're probably going to want to turn on as many as possible really to help with mitigation of image retention risk. So we'll turn the static screen detection on. You can control how quickly that activates and the time required, as well as the reducing level. So have a play around with those and find a setting that works for you. That will basically just detect static content on the screen and then dim it after a certain period of time to help mitigate image retention and burn-in risks. So that's useful to turn on. Multi-logo protection, again, you can turn that on. That will detect static elements, head-up displays, logos, that kind of thing. You can control the reducing level there between 1 and 2, depending on whether you find that distracting or not in usage. Taskbar detection dims the taskbar. Boundary detection dims the boundary between different windows and windows in your background. For all of these, you can control the reducing level again. So basically turn on as many of those as you can, but if you find any of them distracting during your usage, you can of course just come in here and tweak the settings or turn them off if you need to. We've now also activated HDR from Windows. That will trigger the screen to go into HDR mode. As you can see here, it's now labeled as HDR on in the menu. A lot of the sections and settings are now unavailable. So for instance, in here, you can't control the brightness anymore, or the contrast or color temperature. Those are all locked now in HDR mode. The only setting really here to change would be in this display HDR setting. You can see there's options between True Black 400 and Peak 1000. The True Black 400 mode will cap your maximum peak brightness at around 450 nits, but it does look a little bit brighter in certain content at the moment because of the way the Peak 1000 mode is configured. On the other hand, the Peak 1000 mode can reach up to the highest peak brightness of the panel, but some of the mid-tone greys are not as bright as they should be, and so some content can actually look darker than the True Black mode. Our recommendation here for now is to have an experiment with these for your different content. Try them both, see which one looks best to you. Hopefully MSI will be updating the Peak 1000 mode accuracy at some point in the future, which will negate the need to even use the True Black 400 mode. But for now, try them both out and see which one you prefer. So that's everything set up hopefully for SDR and HDR usage, as well as the OLED Care settings. Let us know in the comments section below if you've got any questions at all. And down in the description, you'll also find the file to download for the Gaming Intelligence app, which will automatically import all of these settings via the app for your screen if you want, as well as a link to our calibrated ICC profile that we talked about earlier as well. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please just give us a quick thumbs up, and don't forget to hit subscribe to stay up to date on future monitor content, videos and other information. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.